Okay, so we're diving into a word today that honestly sounds more like a made-up pasta dish or something a bad magician would yell, Fugazi. But stick with us because we're about to uncover a word with a super fascinating history and an even deeper meaning. We're going to be looking at an episode of the podcast Word Bogglers. The hosts, Doe and Transcript the Truth, really dug deep into this slang term, and, well, let's just say we learned a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how a word that sounds, so lighthearted actually comes from a scene that was all about rebellion and authenticity, the 1980s New York City punk scene, to be exact. Fugazi started there as slang for anything fake or deceptive. Think of it like those knockoff designer bags you see being sold on street corners.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But get this, Fugazi isn't just slang, it's also the name of a massively influential punk band, and that's where things get really interesting.
Right, and the band Fugazi was, like, seriously committed to authenticity.
Yeah.
They even kept their ticket prices super low because they wanted their music to be accessible to everyone, not just, the people who could afford it. They just totally rejected that whole idea of putting profit over a real connection with their fans.
So you have this word that means fake, but then you have this band that was like the definition of real. How does that even work?
Well, that's the cool part. The band Fugazi basically took the meaning of the word and flipped it on its head. They embodied everything, not Fugazi, in a music industry that a lot of people saw as superficial and driven by commercialism.
Yeah, I see that. Their whole DIY approach and how dedicated they were to their message really set them apart.
Absolutely. They formed in 1987,
Yeah.
and some of the members actually came from other well-known punk bands like Minor Threat, and their live shows, legendary. Raw energy, no frills, just totally focused on the music and the message. People would describe their shows as intense, like being in a mosh pit that was basically Twister gone wrong.
Wow, that sounds wild. But beyond just the energy, what was it about Fugazi's music that people connected with so much?
I think it was their authenticity, that commitment to staying true to their values and beliefs, even if it meant they wouldn't be mainstream successful. They just stood against that fake commercialism that was everywhere in the music industry, and it really hit home with their fans.
Okay, so we've got this word that started as slang, like way back in the punk scene, and then it becomes the name of this band that's like fighting against everything fake in the music industry. But what does Fugazi actually mean to us, like today, when we're not in a mosh pit?
That's a really good question because Fugazi isn't really just about punk rock, is it? It's about something way bigger. It's about being genuine and authentic and true to yourself in a world that seems to reward the exact opposite.
Right, it's like the word itself has like evolved. It's not just about spotting a fake handbag anymore. It's about like recognizing when someone's being phony or trying to sell you something that's not real.
Yeah, exactly. And the way we use Fugazi has changed too. We might say something like, that excuse is a total Fugazi. Or like, don't be a Fugazi.
It's kind of crazy how a word from this, like, underground punk scene has become such a common way to call out BS. It's almost like an authenticity detector.
And what's even more interesting is that you can actually use Fugazi as a compliment, which is kind of ironic if you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
Like imagine someone saying, you're not Fugazi, man. You're the real deal.
I have to say, being called Fugazi in that way actually sounds pretty cool. It's like a badge of honor for being genuine.
Right. It's like that rebellious spirit, that need to be yourself and not just follow everyone else. It's all about individuality and being real. And that's something that really connects with people, even if they've never heard of the band.
Yeah, it sounds like Fugazi is more than just a word. It's like a whole philosophy, a way of looking at the world and choosing to be real even when it's tough.
Exactly. And that brings us to a big question, especially in today's world. We're constantly bombarded with FIP news and everyone's putting on a show online. So what does it really mean to be not Fugazi in a world that's like so digital?
It's a good question. I mean, how do we even figure out what's authentic when so much of our lives are online? It's so easy to just show a version of ourselves that's not totally real.
It's definitely a challenge. And it's something we all have to deal with as we try to figure out how to be ourselves in a world that's, obsessed with looking perfect.
It really is amazing how we started with this one word, Fugazi, and ended up talking about, like, the meaning of life, right?
Yeah, it's crazy how one word can take you from, mosh pits to these really deep questions. Like it shows how language can change over time,
Hmm.
especially as culture changes and we face new challenges.
I know, and what's so cool is that Fugazi has become more than just a word. It's like a whole philosophy.
Yeah, like a guide for navigating a world where everyone's trying to put on a show.
It,
It reminds us that authenticity still matters. Like even though it's way easier to just blend in or put on a fake smile, there's real power in being yourself and being genuine.
yeah, totally. So next time you hear someone say Fugazi, don't just think of, a bad magic trick. Think about what it means to be real, to be not Fugazi, especially in a world that wants you to be anything but.
It's a challenge, but
Yeah.
it's worth it. And hey, maybe a little bit of that Fugazi spirit, that rebellious energy and authenticity. Maybe that's what we all need to navigate, like all the craziness of the world today.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Fugazi, and we're left with this question. How do we keep it real in a world that's full of so much fake? How do we stay true to ourselves? That's something we can all think about.